All right, well, we're going to whet your appetite, I guess we would say, for database applications, which is almost exclusively what we work on in the upper level classes, the Java frameworks classes. We also do substantial database work in Java 3, which would be the next class up for you all if you choose to stay with us. And this database class is, this database program, excuse me, is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be one form. We're going to read the database and just modify a little table that produces some results for us. But you'll need to download both the spec and this is the .SQL file is the script file that builds the database, and we'll have to run that file inside our MySQL windows. And you want to put that somewhere that's easy to get to. Don't put it way down deep inside a path with multiple directories and folders, and especially don't put it in a folder set that has spaces in the names of the folders. So the easiest thing to do if you've got a flash drive with you is just to put it right at the root of your flash drive. I am going to go ahead and put my sales DB at my C drive, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in the IS-287 folder because that's going to be pretty easy to find as well. And then the spec we'll want hanging around in the same spot so that we can look at that. Did the MySQL, did it ever come up for you? It's under, right, so while we're here, what we want to open up in order to get ready to load that file is the MySQL command line client. It should be, if you don't see it on the main list, scroll down to the MySQL. Whoops, I passed it. There it is. Open up MySQL and it should be in the list of items. So if you open up the command line client on our drives, the root password should be Sesame, S-E-S-A-M-E, all lowercase, as in open sesame, but S-E-S-A-M-E, lowercase. And you can do a show databases. If you're using a borrowed drive tonight, you're likely to see a lot of stuff kind of like what I have. I've got a club database and a Henry Books database that both go with the 294 frameworks class. Other drives might have other things, but it doesn't matter what's there, just that you begin to learn how to navigate inside the command line client, because we'll need to do a few things here and there inside the MySQL client. In fact, the first thing, I guess since we're here, did everybody get into a client? Okay. Since we're here, let's go ahead and load the sales DB. And to do that, it's a very strange command. It's a /dot space. Should be just Sesame. Well, that's if you load it, if it's on our drive. If you loaded it on your drive, it could be anything. But Sesame, S-E-S-A-M-E, works for our drives. Not getting in? Okay. Well, we can get you another drive if you need it. Anyway, /dot, and then you put the full path to the salesdb.sql file. So in my case, it's C/C:/IS287 /salesdb.sql, and you do need to put the .sql on your path name. Most commands take a semicolon when you're inside the command line client. This one does not, because it'll think the semicolon is a part of the file name. So no semicolon, you just /dot space, give it the full path down to your salesdb SQL, and hit enter. And it will run and change rows and write queries and build the database. This is usually one of the harder things when students are just starting out with MySQL, this kind of funky way you navigate inside the client. So if you're having trouble, we'll stop and make sure you get it loaded. But if it runs successfully and you do a show databases again, you should now see SalesDB. Yeah, so you have to know where it is that you put it when you downloaded the file. So mine is down here in my C:/IS287 folder. Success or no? But it is running, okay? Everybody else able to run the query? Still not into the database? I'm sorry? No, I mean, we can get you a drive if you... Okay. No. Just not... yeah. Another question? No. They're backslashes between the folder names. Yeah. The capital doesn't matter. Capitalization doesn't matter here. .SQL, right? But no space. I'm sorry? No semicolon at the end. No. Is it running? Okay. All right. Well, to begin looking at it, you type use SalesDB, and this does take a semicolon. So use, and I do have a little document posted under course content which talks about the MySQL commands. So that's there if you want to take a look or even print it out for reference. After use SalesDB, you can do a show tables, and it'll give you the list of data tables that are in place. And the two data tables that we're going to be interested in are the customer table. So you can describe customer, which shows you've got an ID and a name for the customer and an address and other interesting things. And then we're also going to end up using the sales order table. Now that does have an underscore in the name. So if you describe sales underscore order, semicolon, you'll see that it's pretty simple. That one is. It's just an individual order entry that also has a total, because we're going to be interested in looking at all of our customers in a drop-down list and then selecting a customer in order to see all of their orders. And the total of their orders. Was everyone able to observe the files? Now if you do a SQL command, and we'll end up doing this embedded in our Java code, but a SQL command directly in the client would be something like select star from customer, semicolon. So you're saying, give me all the data that is in the customer table. And when you hit enter, you get a lot of stuff that may or may not make any sense, but if you scroll back up to the top, it'll show you the columns. So customer ID, name of the customer, then the address, city, state, zip. I guess it's got a comment field, some other things. Area code, salesperson ID, the salesperson in the employee file that made the sale, and so forth. Anyway, That we'll end up coming back to when we start to summarize it inside our Java program. But that's all we really need to look at right now. It's usually a good idea to have it on hand. So rather than closing the command line client, I'm just going to minimize it. And then I'm going to look at the specific spec for the application. The screen, happily, is also not too difficult. It's a drop-down in which we will put all of the customers after we read them out of the database. Then an empty table. So this is a JTable that's right on the form itself. We're not going to have to build it in code. We're just going to build it right from the form. And it will end up showing, after a customer is selected, all of the sales, and we'll total those into a text field down here, and we've got a clear button. So if you look at the sample, oh, and there's a menu item. That's what that was showing. I wouldn't really have to do this, but in order to make it sort of step by step as we work through it, I do have a file menu that says load. So we're not going to actually see any data until we run the load customers operation, and then everything will be available to us. The drop-down after a load operation will show just the names and in parentheses the customer numbers for each of our customers. Notice that they're in alphabetical order. And then once a customer is selected, such as Al and Bob's Sports, we'll get orders. And so there are all the orders and a final total printed out. So sales on file came out to 11. All right, that's where we're headed. There is a possibility that some of those customers in the list have no sales on file, and you'll want to indicate that on your table if that turns out to be the case. But the other parts down here are the SQL commands that we're going to use to grab the data and do this and that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get rolling. Pardon? Problem? Oh, okay. So in NetBeans, file, new project. It is a Java desktop application, as we've been doing. All of ours are that way in this semester. And you can ignore the disclaimer. It will be SalesDB as a project name, and don't forget to change the folder to whichever folder you want for your location. Now, this desktop application does have a database option, but we're not taking that. We're doing it by hand, essentially, from scratch. So don't take the database application. It's still just a basic application. All right, we can finish. And that will give us our usual suspects for the form. Might as well add the first, well, we'll add all the items since we're here. So the label we need at the top will say select customer. And you can go bold on the font if you want. But then remember that the next item is one we haven't used before. So it is a combo box. Okay? So take a combo box and put it over there. Now we need to clear out some features of this combo box. So I'm going to stretch it out. Selected item and model. So we don't want any selected item. We're going to, oops, oh, I clicked it and it went to that. Okay, ignore that, sorry, cancel. We're going to do the model first. So a model is, you know, what is expected to exist in the combo box. And I don't know why they have a default model at design time because you always do this. You always build it at runtime. So if you click the ellipse on model, you want to delete, so highlight all of the entries and just delete them so that there's nothing showing. We want it empty. And then click OK. So selected item is null, model is empty. And we need to change the name. I think J combo box 1 isn't that useful to us, so let's right click and change the variable name to JCMB customer. This is where our customer names are going to go. So JCMB for combo customer. What comes next is a table. So go down and grab table. It's about at the bottom of your swing controls. So grab a table, bring it up. Now this is going to be large, so this is kind of annoying. Position it right underneath your combo box and then click, but make sure you're going to have to drop down your overall form so that it doesn't, you need to make sure that what am I trying to say? You need to make sure that your table doesn't actually end up in your status area. That'll be a problem. But you can once it's on the form, you can shrink it down a little bit. Well, the table also has a model, which we don't want. We're going to build it in code. So go ahead and click the ellipse on the model for the table. And here I think what we have to do is shrink the columns and the rows down to 0. So use the minus sign on rows and columns, shrink them down to nothing, then click OK. And there is our empty table, which is the way we want it to start. And let's change the name of this guy as well. Right-click, change variable name to JTBL sales. This is where the sales data will appear. A couple of things we can go ahead and put at the bottom. Text field, well, label, well, we'll put the text field first. Text field goes down here at the bottom. No starting value, so you'll need to bring it out a little bit. Whoops, didn't like that, did it? You want to right align, so horizontal alignment on this field will be a drop down for right align. And change the variable name on this one as well. So right click, change variable name to JTXT tote sales. So table contains the individual sales records. This field contains the total value. Tote sales. And then a label indicating that. So find your label, just bring it down. And the label says total sales. Actually, I think I've got a really long label. We'll just leave it at total sales. That'll do the job for us on this instance. I'm going to go bold on the font again just so it's a little readable, a little more readable. And the last thing on the main form is that clear button, so you can go ahead and grab a button, bring it down, have it say clear, and change the variable name on that. So right click to JBTN clear. And we're almost ready. But we have to add a menu item. Is everybody with me? Okay, so now this we have to be a little careful. I don't know if we've done this yet or done it in this course or not, but you have to make sure that file is selected. So you've got the orange box around File. And then you right-click and go down to Add from Palette, not a menu, but a menu item. You want to add from palette menu item. Once you do that, you've got an entry that's below exit. We'll fix that in a moment. But the text property for this is something like load customers. And we are going to change the name. So with this still selected, right-click and do change variable name. So instead of J menu item 1, it's going to be JMNU load. JMNU load. Now the last thing we need to do is move it up above exit, just for logic's sake. So click and drag it up, and you'll see the little hash mark line. Once you've got the hash marks at the top of that box area, you can let go on your click and drag, and you should now be seeing load customers as the top menu item underneath File. Okay, well, one of the things that you do all the time when you're working with databases is that you write business objects, often called plain old Java objects or POJOs. You build a business object to match or to mirror your data table that you're interested in. And in this case, I'm going to do that for the customer record. So if we go back to our table, to our MySQL command line client, and we describe customer, you can see all the fields that are a part of a customer record. And we want to build a plain old Java object to encompass all of that data. So I'm going to do that by creating a business package. So right-click, new Java package, business. And then right-click and new Java class, customer with a capital C. It's perfectly all right to name it the same thing as the data table. Clear out some of those excess comments. Now you don't have to name your variables the same as you have in the data table itself. So there, when you get up to frameworks and you start working with products like Hibernate, there's going to be some tools for automatically linking a Java object to a data table. But even then, you aren't going to have to name your internal globals the same as the table values. So here's what I have in terms of my globals. I've got a private int for cust ID, that's the customer ID, the sales ID, the area code, and the phone number. And the reason for those, if we look back at our description, do I have two command line clients open really? Oh yes, I do. Sorry. Cust ID for customer is an int. Area code is an int. Salesperson ID is what I meant by sales ID, salesperson ID. And, phone number, interestingly, it's instead of an int, it's showing as a decimal 7, but that's still really an int. So as far as our Java data is concerned, it's an int. All right. Now the others. So we're going to also have a private double for C limit. credit limit for the customer, and then the rest are strings. So we're going to have private strings for C name, customer name, ADDR for address, city for the city name, state for the state name, zip is a character field in our table, and then there is that comments field. So those are all the variables that we will need as globals in the class so that we can fill every instance of the class with a full record from the customer table. We'll build an empty constructor, so public customer with no arguments, just needs to set everything to a starting value, so cust ID to 0, sales ID to 0, area code to 0, phone number to 0, C limit also to 0, and then all of the string fields to the empty string. Make sure when you do an empty string that you're putting double quote, don't put a space in there. I was working with a student in Java 1 who couldn't figure out why she wasn't seeing anything on her outputs, because she was putting a space in her fields, including the error message field, and so it was always saying that there was an error message present, and she didn't get past it because it was just a blank. Anyway, state, empty string, zip, empty string, and comments, empty string. All right, well, normally you'll want get and set methods for all of your global variables that match the fields, the table fields. So a plain old Java object typically needs an empty constructor, and then it needs get and set values because it's really just a data warehouse for the records that come in from the table. So we can do that by the refactoring and encapsulating the fields. So we should be able to make short work of this customer table, at least for the moment. Is everybody ready? Got your empty constructor in place? Okay. Go to right-click on customer.java, down to refactor, encapsulate fields, and we're going to let the environment, let the IDE, NetBeans, write all of our get and set methods for us. And I think we want everything here. Just do a quick scan through everything. Yep. So just do a select all. So we're going to have get and set methods for all of these fields. It'll make the names correct with the uppercase in the first word. JavaDoc none is what I prefer. There's no reason to have a useless comment in it. And refactor. So once you've done a select all, you can go straight to refactor. And lo and behold, it has written all of our get and set values, or methods. Well, this is interesting. Why did my sales DB Oh, right. Thanks for mentioning that. I always forget that our current environment when we start a project is starting it at JDK 5, which is no good. So right-click on the Sales DB top level, Properties, JDK 8, not 5. Wow, that goes back all the way to 1. Okay. When you get to NetBeans 8.2, they started doing 6 and above. They don't worry about anything older than 6. Okay, JDK 8 as our binary source. That did it. It took it out. How interesting. Okay. Well, we will have to come back to the customer class for just one little bit of business here in a few moments. But for right now, we're ready to start working on the form process of reading data. Let's see. What do I want? Let me. Well, let me give you the globals first before we create an event for that load method. Go back to the source code. So in our form, we're going to have 2 times that we read the database. The first time is when we do the load for the customer table, and then the second time when we've selected a customer and we're going to do a load for the actual sales values, sales items. Since we're going to do it twice, I'm going to create 2 different, or rather I'm going to create as global a single set of connection values. So when you go to connect your Java program to a MySQL database, you typically use the JDBC connector, the Java database connector. In fact, while we're here, if you open up your libraries, you'll notice that it's not there. We have Swing and JDK8, but we don't have the connector. So I'm going to right-click on Libraries and ask to add a library. And if you scroll down, you should find, oh, there it is, MySQL, so it's under the M's, MySQL JDBC driver. That is the component which lets you actually connect to the database and lets all the other stuff you're doing work against it. So MySQL JDBC driver, you're going to add that library. Okay. But you still have to create a connection string, and you have to give it your logon credentials so that you can authenticate to the database when you read the data. And we're going to do that with the following. So in the globals area, I'm going to say string db URL, so the URL for this database. And you have to be very careful with your typing here. Every character must be correct. JDBC : so JDBC is the driver, MySQL : excuse me, not semicolon, I typed a semicolon there, colon, JDBC : MySQL : so it's a MySQL database that we're connecting to. Where does it reside? So you can actually connect to databases anywhere that you have access, across the network or across the internet for that matter. But ours is loaded on our local host. So /localhost, spelled out, one word, lowercase, localhost, then another colon, and 3306, that is the port number where MySQL is listening. So it's MySQL is waiting for connections to come in on port 3306. That was the default, one of the defaults when we did the install. All right, then we're going to do sales DB, so / and the name of the database you're connecting to. And we want to do the following, question mark. Now there are options, parameters that are being sent. Use SSL equal false. We're not going to use the secure connection type. We don't need it. It's just a local. So use SSL equal false will avoid us having a particular error message down the line. Okay. Then we're going to have a string DB user, which is how we're authenticating. And that will be root, all lowercase. And then string DB PWD for password, and that is Sesame. Now there's always a concern when you put a password like this in clear text inside your program. However, the .javas are compiled, or pseudo-compiled technically, into .class files. And so as long as you deploy your application without the .javas being in the deployment, this should still be technically hidden from any user, although they could crack the they could start trying to read the file or reverse engineer the class file, and they might get it back. But so it's not wonderfully safe, but it's okay for our purposes. All right. Those are the globals we'll need to make our actual connection. Let's see if we can go down. Oh, sorry, I don't have it yet. Back to design. I hadn't created my my event. So back to design view, click File, make sure that Load Customers, JMNU Load, is the selected menu item, and we're going to create an event. And the default event for a menu item is the click event. So if you right-click and do Events Action, you can just take the action performed default, and that'll be what fires when a click on the menu is given. So Load Customers, Events, Action, Action Performed. All right. Here's how we're going to use that connection. We'll do everything. Oh, let's do a status message label. Set text to the empty string. Wow, I was having trouble typing that tonight. And then everything else is in a try-catch, because anytime you do database operations, you run the possibility of SQL errors or Java I/O errors, and so you're going to have to catch all of those. But the first thing we build to get access to the database is what's called a connection object. So connection, C-O-N-N, and we obtain this connection from something called the driver manager, which is a built-in component to our system. So driver, well, no, it's not. It'll be an import, I think, too. Driver manager dot. So driver manager has a get connection method. In fact, it has several overloaded methods. We want the one that expects a URL, a username, and a password. So we're going to get the connection based on exactly what I did. Well, not exactly, but DB URL is the first entry. That's our pointer to the database. DB user is next, and then DB PWD for the password, and then semicolon at the end. All right, now we've got a number of imports needed. In fact, I'm going to bring the driver manager down here. Okay, so connection.con or connection space CONN needs an import, but be very careful here. We're not actually importing the COM MySQL JDBC connection. We're importing the Java SQL connection. I don't know why it's second, but it's second in the list in my case. So the Java SQL connection will work. And then the driver manager, what is it saying about that? It's saying, oh, it's unhappy because now it knows that we might throw a SQL exception and we haven't caught it. So let's go down and catch it. So we can do a catch SQL exception E. And so if we try to make a connection and we can't do it, then status, that'll require an import for the, so the SQL exception itself requires an import. So Java SQL exception, import, and then status message label, set text to SQL error, and we'll add e.getMessage to that. So the user will see at the bottom of the screen something about what went wrong if they're unable to make the connection. After you make a connection, let me look at the imports up above. Yeah, for whatever reason, my system did an automatic import of the driver manager, so that is a package that has to be imported. If yours driver manager was in red, that's just another import, Java SQL.driver manager. Okay, after a connection, we're going to create a statement object which will let us run a query. So we're going to do statement S equals CONN create statement. So we're creating the statement object from the connection, but that's another import. So import Java, careful, Java SQL statement. So java.sql.statement, Java SQL statement, imported. And now we want the string, which will be the actual SQL command. So we're going to create a string SQL, and this command will be select star from from customer, order by, so we can sequence it by name. And that was given to you in the spec, so you can go back and look at it there. But what we're asking the database connection to do is to run this SQL command, which will pull all fields and all records from customer, but it will give them to you in a sort order, which is based on the name, which is the customer name. Okay, we've got everything in place. We're now ready to run this command, but of course we need some place to put the results. So when you run the SQL command, it's basically giving a table back to you, so it's giving rows and columns. We're going to call that, on the Java side, a result set. So result set R is going to be S dot the execute query method of the statement, and execute query for the statement takes the SQL string as its command. Result set requires an import as well. Java SQL result set. Okay, so for right now, so we can finally do a test of this, I'm going to take the result set. Now the result set is kind of interesting. I don't know if I've said yet in the class, I sometimes do just as an aside, but a result set is one of the few objects that is not zero-based. So the first record in a result set is actually record 1. So if we go to r.last, we tell the result set to move to the last record. There's no size value for a result set. We can't just do a quick, hey, how many rows do you have? So we have to do r.last, and then we can look at the row number that we're on as far as the last record goes, and that'll tell us how many rows we actually read. So I'm going to do a status message label, set text, that says customers equal r dot row number. Get row, sorry, r dot get row, which is just an integer. So it just returns the number of the row you're currently on, and we know we went to the last row, so that should do it. All right. I'm ready finally to test and see if we can get our system to do a load. We haven't done anything with the data, but we should be able to at least see how many records there were from the customer table. And let's go out to our MySQL command and do a select star from customer again to remind ourselves that there are 33. So there are 33 customer records in the table, and we will run our program and see if our system says the same. So nothing yet in the combo box. Nothing has been filled. But if we do a file, load customers, you should see at the bottom, ta-da, customers equal 33. Success? I'm seeing a couple of yeses and some nos. You can close the program at that point. because we have some more work to do. Does anybody need me to look at errors? Okay. I'll stop here and we'll take a look. Okay. After you get results back, we're going to go through a loop to process every record of the result set and put it in a customer field and add the customer field to the combo box. So you can do this directly. So the nice thing about the combo box in Java, which is not true of, for example, Visual Studio for the Windows, is that you can actually put a full object, in a sense, into the combo box. So we're going to create a customer, and we're going to put the whole customer in there. So here we go. I'm going to go r.first. So after we go to the last record in order to get our row count out, I'm going to move back to the first record. And then I'm going to do, in a do loop, because we're at the first record, I do it as a do loop instead of a while. So a do loop says, all right, I need customer C as a new customer. So we're creating this object C, which will be our customer, and we're going to need to do the import for business.customer. Oh, and I guess we should go ahead and say, well, what's our while? So do, go down to the closing curly brace for the do loop and say while r.next. So in other words, while we can go to as long as we can still go to a next record in the result set, then do it and we'll loop around. Okay, the customer is built pretty simply by calling for the individual values out of the result set and passing them over to the customer. So c.set, hold on, oh, what is going on here? I must have imported the wrong wrong customer? No, business.customer. Why is it not recognizing? You're seeing all yours? Gets and sets? Okay, I must have a clean and build problem. Pardon? Oh, were they? Oh dear. Oh, look at that. Thank you for noticing that. I completely botched my my refactoring. I made them protected. Okay, well, I'm glad that explains it. I'm going to delete all that stuff. All goes. Okay, try again. Customer. Refactor. Encapsulate fields. Select all. Not fields visibility is private, that's correct, but accessors visibility is public. It's terrible. And they've changed the default setting on that. Okay, we want public get and set methods. The individual global variables are private, so that's correct. And now we can refactor. Well, I was really not paying attention tonight. Okay, public get sets, not protected, public. But as we now know, protected has a special meaning. It means that subclasses could get to them, but not the outside world. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the view in the code, and now when I type C, it should have, there we go, it has all the gets and sets. So we're going to do a set. My typing tonight. Set customer ID. What do we set it with? We set it with an r.getInt, and the column name is given as the parameter. So customer ID is the column name. If we go back and check, if we describe customer underscore ID. Now, I just want to mention that in earlier versions of the JDBC driver, if the field names were all uppercase, you would have to put this entry in uppercase. But I believe that's been changed. So I think we can just spell it correctly and be okay. But we'll see. We'll see in just a moment. All right, let's do customer ID, and then we'll do a set customer name as an r.getString for name. So you use the getInt, getString, getDouble, getDate, whatever you need to match the column value, and you just pull it out of the result set record, put it into the customer record. I'll do a couple more. We don't need to really do the whole thing, but c.set address will be an r.getString for ADDRESS. Well, we're here. Let's do it. C.set city, r.getString for city. State, oops, I had an extra character there at the end of my line. C.set state, r.getString for state. C.set zip, r.getString for zip. Actually, it's zip underscore code, apparently, according to my notes here. Let's double check that. Yeah, zip underscore code. Then area code is numeric, so we'll do a c.set area code as an r.getInt for area code. You can see this gets kind of tedious. You'll really enjoy when we finally get to, in Java 3, we start doing hibernate type work, which really makes this much easier. Okay, then c.set phone number, r.getInt for phone underscore number. C.set salesperson ID, sales ID, as r.getInt for salesperson underscore ID. Got to spell all these correctly with the proper underscores if they exist. And then c.set credit limit will be an r. Here's a different one, getDouble for credit underscore limit. I had much bigger plans for this little database project, which is why I had you build the entire customer record, but we're not going to be able to use all of it. But the final one is c.set comments with an r.getString for comments. Okay, so we've created a C, we've filled it with data from the result set, and now we want to add it to the combo box, so we do a JCMB customer dot add item, so there's an add item method, and the item takes our C. Okay. This is another, I should have remembered this. This is another change to the way they've done the combo box. So I think there's a property of the combo box that we have to, it's not allowing our full customer object into the combo box. So let's go out to the design. Let's choose combo box. Okay, here we go. So under code, so with the combo box selected, you have to jump to the code tab where it says type parameters. You want to remove the string. And I think that's all we have to do. So if we remove type parameters, so that it was expecting a string, now we've said it can take anything. Let's try it. Let's see if our code is happy now. Why can't it find JCMB customer now? Did I misspell it? JCMB customer. Well, interesting. When in doubt, try again. JCMB customer. It is definitely not recognizing my combo box. Now this is not a problem that I've noticed before. JCMB customer is a JCombo box. It's definitely there. Let me pause the recording for a minute and see what's going on. Well, there was no solution found in terms of the properties. What we had to do for our CMB customer combo box is we selected it and then hit delete. We just removed it altogether. Then I brought a new combo box down, and I did things in a very specific order. First is I went to the code and I took out the type parameter of string so that it accepts any type of object. Then I went back to properties and I took out the model. So the 1, 2, 3, 4 business, deleted those entries, clicked OK. Then I did a right click, changed variable name to JCMB customer. And after I did that, so I had a combo box as a JCombo box called CMB customer. It's in my main panel. Then when I went to source code, after I'd created my customer C, I was able to do a JCMB customer dot. Now it's seeing it as a green element. There's an add item option, and we can add C to the box. Okay. And so that's all that the while loop needs to do. But when you're done, if you're inside the try-catch, as we are here, after the while loop is finished, you need to be careful. You need to close your database objects. So result set has a close method, r.close. I don't think the statement has one, but the connection has a close. I guess I should check on the statement. Yeah, there is a close method for the statement. So we're going to close the result set. We're going to close the statement. We're going to close the connection. That's so nothing gets wonky in terms of our pointers into the database. And then, I want to make sure that the combo box is enabled. So it's JCMB customer dot set enabled to true, and I'm actually going to set the selected index to -1. So JCMB customer dot set selected index to -1, and that means that there's no item showing in the combo box at the time that we're finished building it. Okay. We've caught our SQL exception. That should be good enough, and we're ready to go. Okay. So now we're going to try, and we're going to see one little quirky thing. I know I'm keeping you long for our break, but I want to get this first section done. So if we clean and build now, the red should go away. Go away, red. Thank you. And we run it. Now, right now there's nothing in it. We do a file load. It said 33 customers, and when you do a drop down, it says, oh, well, we got lots of stuff in it, but what in the heck is that? Why aren't we seeing the customer names or something? And the answer is because we put the full object in the combo box, it automatically uses the toString method of the class, of the Java class. Well, toString is there's a default which just shows the memory location. So all of that business.customer@, that's a memory location after that. So it's just showing us where in memory these items are, which isn't going to do the job. So what we have to do, if we close our program here, oh, remind me about this error message as well. What we have to do is change the toString method of customer.java so that it shows what we want. This is what I kind of warned you about when I said we'd have to come back here. So let's go to customer.java, and at the bottom I'm going to create a public string method called toString, lowercase to, capital S on string, and that will override the default toString method so we can put anything we want in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to return this .cname, the customer name, plus in parentheses the customer ID. So I'm building my own display entry in the toString method, and because toString has a default method for every object, it says, hey, you've overridden, it's an override situation, you've overridden the toString method, so let's add an annotation that says override, and that's what we did. So just click it and let it add the override annotation. So now with the toString method of our own design, when we run the program and do a file load, we get our 33 customers, and ta-da, we have our full list of customers, and we can select individual customers. So that's a good place to stop for our break, and we'll come back and see if we can't make something happen on the table. There was one error that was showing up, which a couple of you noticed in the classroom here, and which I hadn't addressed yet. If we run the program, when we first load, in fact, when we first load it, it comes back on the console with this warning, no saved state for Java Swing JTable. And after doing some research, it turns out that that's just a known bug. and there is a fix for it. It's not too complicated. If you go in the source code for the form up to the instantiation of the form, right after the components, the init components, which means that all the items are available, you can do the following. JTBL sales set name to null. And that should actually fix the issue. Now I've got another command in here that I don't think we need. Let me see. No. So that fixed our error. For some reason in code I had cleared the table on startup, but well, we don't need to do that. So we'll just continue on. All right. Now, once we have the records in play. Oh, I forgot to do one other thing. Sorry. On the combo box, we do want to disable it at the start. So find the enabled property and deselect it. So it doesn't start selected. It only gets selected after we do a successful load. Okay. Well, what's going to happen now is that they're going to select from the drop-down. Excuse me. I'm going to select a customer. And we need to take further action on the database after that happens. So, from the combo box, right-click, go to Events, and the event we want is the state changed. So, item state changed. In other words, the combo box, what's showing in the combo box changes, the entry that's there. So item state changed is the event that we're going to operate on. And the first thing we need to show is that if the selected item is still -1, that's how we made no item visible at the start. If it's still -1, then we don't want to do anything because they haven't really selected a customer. So if JCMB customer get selected, you have to get the selected index and then compare it is equal to -1. So if we get the selected index and it is equal to -1, then status message label set text to no customer selected, and we'll do a return right there. And I think that we actually have enough code now to show you an interesting little problem that hasn't been revealed yet, has not been obvious. Let's run the program again and try a load operation. Okay, so nothing selected. We can't click on the combo box. Nothing in the table. Nothing in total. Well, we shouldn't be able to. We ought to keep ourselves out of that field too. But anyway, if nothing in the status message, if we do a load, no customer selected. Instead of the customers equal 33, we're seeing no customer selected. What in the heck is going on? Because the the items are there. Well, it turns out, and this is something that you have to worry about a lot in an event-driven model, if you're working with event-driven environments, as most are these days. The work that we were doing to build the combo box inside the load was firing the item state changed event for the combo box. Every time we took a customer and we put it into the combo box, it actually fired the event. And so the very last thing we did is we set the selected index to -1, which fired the event again, and we're now seeing, oh, no customer selected. So we want to suppress that behavior. Unfortunately, there's no neat or clean way to do it. The way I generally do it, and I've done that, it's true in Windows environments as well as Java environments, or Visual Studio environments. I go ahead and create a Boolean, a global Boolean. So Boolean, I'm just going to call it loading, equals false. So I'm going to create a Boolean loading, and I'm going to set it to false. However, when I get into the method for the load, at the top of the method, when I start to enter the try-catch, I'm going to say, all right, loading equals true. In other words, I'm about to start loading the combo box. Go through all the code, and when you come out on the other side, the last thing I'm going to do before I leave that method is say, all right, I'm done, so loading can be set back to false. So anytime that I'm inside the load event, my loading Boolean, my global, is true. That will allow me, in other words, I can't suppress the firing of those events, but I can ignore it. So at the very top of CMB customer state changed, I'm going to say, all right, if loading, then just return, don't do anything. And now when I run and load customers, I'm back to normal where it says, hey, your customers are 33, and here we go. So it did an immediate return out of the state changed method. Okay, well, here's the fun part. If we're in the item state changed for the customer combo box, and we get past the first couple of if statements, then we know that they did select somebody. We've got them. So we recover the customer, and we probably ought to do all of this in a try-catch. So we'll start out in the try-catch now. So we're going to recover customer C as a JCMB customer dot get selected item. So the selected index tells you which numerical number you're in the list. So if you got 33 in the list, it tells you, hey, you're on the first one, the second one, or the 0, 1, -1, nothing, you're not on any of them, and so forth. But if we get selected item, not the index, but the item, then we actually recover the whole customer object that was in that position of the combo box. But you'll notice it's not happy yet. It says, hey, I'm not really sure that the selected item is a customer. You have to confirm that to me. So for whatever reason, we have to do a customer cast. So as long as we cast the selected item in the combo box to a customer object, we can put it in C, customer C. Now, I've got a big, long, annoying SQL command that I need to put in place so that I can read all of the sales order values out of the file. And in fact, I'm going to need to know the item. So this is detail. Hold on. Let me see what was I saying here? Oh, I need a count of the item. I wanted a count of the items in the order, so that requires the item table. So I made it just a little bit more complicated than I might have. So there's the select statement that I need to embed into my code, noting that in the where clause, the customer ID equal, that's going to be equal to the customer ID that came out of the combo box. Okay, so here we go. and it does, it doesn't matter if you do this SQL string sooner or later, but I'm just going to do it here. So we're going to have a string SQL that's going to be equal to, and in fact, I think I might be able to copy and paste this whole thing. Let me see if I can copy and paste this whole select line from the spec, then I won't have to type it. But it's going to go wacky on me, so I'm going to have to figure out how to fix it. Okay, so select that whole line, and then you don't want the slash n's. It puts slash n's in them. You don't want that. So to anywhere you see a slash n, take it out. But you should also put space in front of all your sub commands. And now here is where we get a little tricky. So we don't want the 999 we want actually, I'm going to do it the better way. I've got it two ways in my code here. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. We'll do it the preferred way. Put a question mark in the equals and following. Then group by that whole thing, but not the slash n. Keep taking out the slash n's. And then finally the order by. All right. So there's our whole the semicolon goes outside, of course, outside the string. Oh, and that was brought up by one of you about the fact that most SQL commands, when you run them in an environment like the command window, you need a semicolon at the end of the select command or the whatever you've got. We didn't put a semicolon either at the end of this select or at the other select. When you use the JDBC driver, it doesn't need the semicolon inside the select statement. So it's just not necessary. Okay. So there's our whole select, but we have a question mark in the spot where the data value for the customer ID should go. Okay, so that'll be important in just a little bit. Let's also, you know what, I'm going to do this at the before. Let's, at the top, just inside our try, we're going to declare a couple of values that we're going to need for the table. All right, so we're going to have a string double array T and a default table model M. You know where that's going. We'll need to import for default table model. Okay, so those are not sized yet because we don't know how many records are coming back for each customer. But we've got the variables there ready to go. Let's see if we can't build our database connections, but we're going to do it a slightly different way. We're still going to have connection, C-O-N-N, equals driver manager dot get connection. Why isn't it connection con equal driver man? Oh, it's misspelled it. Driver manager dot. Okay, the three level get connection, and it'll be DB URL again, DB user, and DB PWD. So that one it doesn't get correct very well. Okay. Now it's not happy because we haven't done our catch of the SQL exception. So go ahead and down and do catch. SQL exception E, and we'll just do a status message label, set text to SQL error plus e.getMessage. Okay. Well, we created our connection, but instead of just a regular statement, it was okay in the first level because we knew that we were going to select all records from customer and there was no data value that was coming in from the outside. But I just want to show you this alternative. If you've heard about SQL injection, you know that that's a kind of hacker attack where the user is expected to enter a data value and instead they enter a whole SQL command trying to get information out of the database. And so that's called SQL injection. And one of the ways to prevent SQL injection from working is to build this object, which is a prepared statement. So prepared statement PS is equal to conn.prepareStatement using SQL, the string. Now there is an import needed for that. Okay, so prepared statement. And then when you have a prepared statement, you can attach the value, so PS, but you can attach it using the proper data type. So if they were expected to enter a number and they entered a whole SQL command, it wouldn't resolve to a numeric value. So we're going to set int at the first, this is another one position, at the first question mark, we're going to use the C dot get customer ID. So we're going to get the customer ID from the C object, and we're going to set it into our prepared statement at position 1, which means the first question mark in the list. So that's considered much safer to approach it that way. Then result set R equals PS dot execute query. Now you got to be careful though. You've got two execute queries. One takes the SQL command, the SQL string again. The other is just execute query. If you run this with the SQL string again, you won't get the parameter value. So you've got to make sure you do execute query with no parameters because we set the parameter above. Okay, so result set comes back. We can do an r.last and we'll do a little test again. So we'll do a status message label, set text, sales records equal r.getRow. And we'll leave it at that for the moment so we can do a test and see if, in fact, we've written the SQL. And it's really easy to get this SQL messed up because it's, you got to be very picky about the way it's typing. Question? Back up here. Well, all we did there is loading equal true, and then loading equal false at the end. Yeah, before the try there. Right, so the string, the second SQL command will be to get all of the sales records for that particular customer, which we'll then use to display. Okay? In fact, let me make a slight change here. Since I'm going to need this later on. After you go to r.last, I'm going to create an int last row and set it equal to r.getRow, because I'm going to need both. I'm going to need that value, and then I can do, well, I can just leave status message label the way it is. So last row will remain a pointer to how many rows actually came back from the query. So if I run and test it now, and I load customers, there are my 33 customers, but I can also select Al and Bob's Sports. Sales records were 11. That was 208. Let's double check that. So if we do a select, well, let's describe sales order, and sales order has customer ID. So if we select star from sales order where customer ID equals 208, it's numeric. We've got 11 rows for customer 208, and that's what Al and Bob Sports says they are. They're 208. So we got our sales records of 11. So it came back. And so if you're getting a SQL error syntax, it means exactly what it says. It should give you, it's possible that it gives you a little more warning or more message if you, I don't know if it comes out on the screen, but you're going to have to go through your whole select and double check. I can usually see it pretty quickly. Let me come take a quick look. All right. Now we've got two situations that pertain. The first is, oh, and I didn't show that. We do have the possibility, if we run it and load customers, that Al, for example, Al's Pro Shop has no sales records. So that's a different kind of table than the table where we have records. And if you look at the spec, I think you get, oops, that's not it. Wrong spec. I think I give you an example here. So we ended up with the same column counts, but we have a value that just says no sales on file, as opposed to columns with all the correct values. So I am going to have two different actions occur then, depending on whether my last row is 0. So if last row is equal to 0, then my T object, remember I declared my table object as a double array and default table model of M. So my T will be a new string that has only one position for the row and 5 positions for the columns. I guess the other thing I should do before I even check on last row 0 is go ahead and set the cols. Let's do that up top. Let's go up above and do that. So we're going to have a string cols, string array, excuse me, cols equal to the literal entries for order date, comma, order ID, comma, ship date, comma, item count, comma, order total. So there's my, whoops, it gave me an extra, it always does that, it gave me an extra curly brace, so don't get confused by the extra curly brace. So those are my columns. And I'm going to let those columns appear either way, whether we have any rows of orders or we don't. Okay. So now if last row is 0, I set my T, and then I set my M, my default table model, to a new default table model that sends T and cols as the, whoops, I can't spell model, T and cols, but I'll do a JTBL sales, that's my table on the front of the form, set model to M, and then I'm going to, and I created only one row, and then I know I'm ready to do JTBL sales, set value at, I want to set the string no sales on file, and I want to put it at the 0 row, because I only have one row, it's the 0 row, and column 4, which is actually the 5th row of my table. So that's a special case when the result set says, nope, there was nothing there. Otherwise, T is a new string with the size of last row and 5 positions. M is a new default table model with T and cols. Almost sounds like tea and cookies. And then JTBL sales set model to M. Now I'm ready to go through the regular old process. But I tell you what, let's do a quick test just of this, since we've got our 0 position and our number of rows built. Let's see if we're seeing anything. You don't have to even test if you don't want to, but you can. So we load. Now we know Al and Bob Sports should have 11. So there are your columns, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are your 11 rows that have been built. If we switch to Al's Pro Shop, we get no sales on file. There's 3 sales records for Century Shop, etc., etc. Okay, so we're almost there. Almost there. Let's continue. Inside the else clause, so it's getting a little deep in terms of our indentations. We're ready to do an R first. We know we've got records. We just used last row to build them. We can go do our do loop. It'll be while r.next. What do we need to do? We need to set values. So the table row that we want is actually, I'm going to set an integer. Remember, we've built the whole table. We're going through the result set, so we want to set ourselves to the right table row, and that's going to be equal, so TR is equal to wherever we are in the result set minus 1, because the result set is one of those that doesn't start at 0. It starts at 1. But the table row starts at 0, so we do an offset of minus 1. So TR is our table row, and now we're ready to do JTBL sales set value at, and the first value is the order date, so we're going to do an r.getString, on order date. In fact, let me bring this onto its own, since I'm so deep into the indenting here. So we do an r.getString. We get it right out of the table row we're on. It goes in TR, but not column TR. It goes in column 0. So now you should have it. And we'll just continue on. J TBL sales set value at r dot get string for order ID. And here's the trick that we're using. Some of these values are not strings. Well, no, actually these are still strings, so we're okay. So table row, I'm sorry, not 0, ooh, not column 0, column 1 on that one. Then one more, JTBL sales, set value at r.getString for ship underscore date, goes at TR and 3. Sorry, 2. It's the third column, but it's numerical column 2. So order date, order ID, and ship date are the first 3. Then we've got this item count. Well, what is item count called? Oh, I didn't really draw your attention to that. But you'll notice that in the SQL command, we applied an aggregating function, count, of the item IDs. But I aliased the column as item count all run together. So that'll be the name inside the result set. So we can go back down to our get and say, all right, J TBL sales set value at, for this one, is r.getInt. This one is an int, and the string is item count at TR and 4. And then finally, JTBL sales set value at r.getDouble for total at TR and 4. Sorry, the one before should have been 3. I'm still off on my numbers. Make sure that when you're done, you've got 5 entries, but the table column numbers are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are your 5. So that's all inside a do loop, inside the else clause, and when we're done with that, we're still inside the try, just above the catch. Don't forget to do your r.close, your ps.close, and your connection.close. So close them all, and you should have it. Now I've left one thing out. So there's only one thing for you to do on this program in the next week, and that's the total box. So you're going to have to figure out how to do the totaling box. And you know what I also didn't do? Well, we didn't do the right justification. So I don't have that in here, and I don't have the totaling. And one other thing. Let's run it and see. Load. First customer, Owl and Bob Sports, 11 entries. There you go. There are values. We could double check them against the database, but I think we're in good shape. So you should write justify item count and order total, those 2 columns. You should figure out how to put the proper value in the total sales box, and you should format the order total for currency, which you should also do for total sales. The only other thing that I might suggest, and I'm not too worried about this, but I'll treat this as extra credit. If you can figure out how to expand that column the way it's shown in the spec, when we have no sales on file, I've actually expanded that column. And the hint here is that that'll be done at the same time you set the column to write justify, maybe? I don't know. Maybe that might be misleading. Anyway, so that I'm not too worried about. You can actually do it by hand from the table. But see if you can expand that column a little bit in code. But the main thing that I want is currency format, write justify, and total in the box. And that'll do it. And if you don't have time to do that, or something, that's something that we can look at on that very last day of work session day on the 14th, if need be. But see what you can do with that while not neglecting the third and final recording for the collections, which is the big monster application. I kind of regret that I didn't do any of those live for you. I guess there was one other thing that we didn't have, and I don't have it in my notes. The clear button. Well, let's see. If we go and create an event for clear, event action performed. We want to clear everything, so status message label, empty. Combo, status, I still can't type tonight. Combo box, all right. Well, the question is how you want to treat it. Do you want to completely reset the form to the beginning so that they have to reload, or do you just want to clear the selection? Let's see, JCMB customer. I think I'm going to reset from the beginning. So I'm going to issue the remove all items method, and then I'm going to set enabled to false. How do we clear the table? Well, this is actually the line that I was going to use at the beginning of the program, but it's not really needed there. What we do is we take JTBL sales and we do a set model, but we use a new default table model with no parameter. So if you give it an empty default table model as the argument to set model, you should end up clearing everything out the way it is at the beginning. We've got JTXT tote sales, set text to the empty string, and I guess we're going to just leave it there because it's up to them to then go back and do a load. So let's see if that works. We run, load customers, we're scrolling through data, looking good. Now we clear. Notice it did fire, no customer selected. You could use the loading Boolean again in a clear if you wanted to, but I'm okay with having it say no customer selected. Nothing here. Oh, we didn't clear out. Well, you can do that. Don't let them into that total sales. But if we do a load again, we're back in business. Okay, so just a few things on the form for you to worry about, but otherwise, we've knocked out 50 more points all in one night. code for what? Which? The which click? Clear click? Okay. All right. I think this is the end of the lecture.